Hi, good morning friends. Welcome to our 6th class of Hadoop, and today we are going to talk about Hadoop daemons. Till now we already know that Hadoop is basically to store huge amount of data as well as to process huge amount of data. Now in the previous classes we had also discussed what are the daemons like name node, secondary name node, job tracker, task tracker and data node. So today we will go in detail and we will try to understand what is the responsibility of each of these daemon. Now for that let's start with a cluster. Let's assume that we have a cluster of 4 slave computers. Let's assume that we have a cluster of 4 slave computers. We call this as slave 1. We call this as slave 2. We call this as slave 3. We call this as slave 4. Okay, so we already discussed that in a typical cluster generally you will have name node and job tracker installed here, right? These two are processes which are running on your master computer. This is your master computer. Now in your slave will have task tracker and will have data node. Here we will have task tracker and data node. Similarly, you will have all the task tracker and data node in your slave computers. Okay, now we will also have a secondary name node installed in a different system. Okay, so in our previous class we had just gone through a very brief description about each of these components. Today we will talk more about these components. Now the first objective of using Hadoop is storing big data, storing huge amount of data, right? So let's assume that in our local system we have a file called sampletext.txt. We'll go through this one. So let's say I have opened my Windows Linux command and in my present working directory my name is Suraj, and in my present working directory here /home/Suraj you have sample-file.txt, and let's say the file the size of this file is let's say only 200 MB. Let's just take an example, 200 MB. Okay, now we already know that if you are working with Apache Hadoop, then by default your block size is 64 MB. That means the 200 MB will not be stored as a single file, but it will be divided into n number of blocks. How many blocks? It is exactly 200 by 64. So approx 4 block will come. Okay, block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4. Let's say the block 1 size is 64 MB, block 2 size is again 64 MB, block 3 size again 64 MB, and block 4 is remaining. It will come, sorry, blocks. Right, so block 1, of 64 MB, block 2 of 64 MB, block 3 of 64 MB, and block 4 of 8 MB. Now when you try to store this file in your Hadoop cluster, this is your Hadoop cluster completely. This is your Hadoop cluster. Okay, and we will try to access this Hadoop cluster using something like a PuTTY or secure CRT. Okay, so we will use PuTTY here. We have a window, we use PuTTY here, and we will try to access the cluster. So the first objective of using Hadoop is storing huge amount of data. So let's assume 64 MB is big amount of data for simplicity only. Okay. Now when you try to store this data to this Hadoop, usually we will give a command called put. Usually we will give a command called, we will use a command called put. Let's copy this one. Okay, we'll see this how to use all these commands and all when we are done with installation of Hadoop. But for the time being, just try to understand that there is a command called put which can be used to write the data into Hadoop cluster. Okay, so this is the command Hadoop fs-put/home/suraj sample.txt and your directory name. Let me copy that here. I don't have space. Okay, alright, so from the command prompt, from the PuTTY, you will give this sort of command: Hadoop fs-put, this is the syntax, /home suraj sample.txt. That means in my present working directory, in my Linux environment local file system, there is a file called sample.txt under this location, and you store it on the Hadoop cluster under this location. So when you say Hadoop cluster, now you can consider this whole system as a one, and try to understand that there is a path called /user/sduser/directory3. There is a path called /user/sduser/directory3, and we are just trying to put this file into this location. Now where that location exists, that will be the combination of all the nodes. Okay, so right now let's not bother about exactly in this system that node exists, but try to understand all these nodes as a single Linux box, and let's try to see that there is a location called /user/sduser, okay, inside which we have directory3. Now when you provide this command, what happens is, when you provide this command Hadoop fs-put, so this put is basically the command. Okay, this put is basically the command, and this put will actually start the transfer, okay, copying the data into Hadoop. Now let's try to understand what is the responsibility of each entity. So whenever you say put, I want to put the data, okay, so you open your terminal, and I will call this as client. Every time when I say client, please refer to this terminal. Okay, every time when I say client, please refer to this terminal. So when I say put, this terminal or this client will interact with main node. Okay, it will interact with this main node. This is step number 1. Now the client will say, I want to write a 200 MB of data into your cluster. Okay, so first of all, main node will not store any data. It is a master process. it will just guide where the data needs to be stored, but name node will really not store any data. So client contacts name node saying that I want to store a data of 200 MB. Now this name node will start contacting all the data nodes. Okay, this name node will start contacting all the data nodes. Okay, so it will contact data node 1, it will contact data node 2, it will contact data node 3, it will contact data node 4. Now why will it contact is, it will try to find out, do these data node have sufficient storage to store this file. Okay, so it will contact data node 1, and let's assume the data node 1 said I have 50 MB only left. Okay, let's say this says I have 200 MB left. Just giving you an example. Let's say this data node says I have 100 GB left. This data node says I have 500 GB left. Empty spaces are available, free spaces are available. So this data node will inform name node, this data node will inform name node, this data node will inform name node, this data node will inform name node. So by the end of this communication, the name node will understand which data node has got how much capacity. Okay, and then this name node will inform the same to your client. So this was step number 1. This will be step number 2. This will be step number 2. So in step number 2, your name node will talk to all the data nodes. The data node will tell the status of the system, and that details will be again communicated back to your client. Okay, so step number 3 is this is step number 3. Right, so this is step number 3. So all the data node will communicate the status to name node. Now the name node will communicate the same status to client. That is step number 4. This is step number 4. Right, so by this time the client will understand the whole status of the cluster. Right, the client will know that which data node has got what capacity. Okay, so the client told the client told name node that I want to store 200 MB of data. Okay, the client did not say I want to store 4 blocks. The client just told I want to store 200 MB of data, and the master, the name node, has given the status. Now the client will start dividing this data. Okay, the client will start dividing this data into 64 MB each. Alright, so don't get confused. It is not the responsibility of the name node to break the data. It is the responsibility of your client application to divide this data into chunks of 64 MB. So the client will divide this block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and then it will start sending this data directly to the data nodes. It will not send by name node. Okay, The work of the name node was just to inform the status of task of the data nodes, okay, to understand what are the free available space in each system. But after knowing that, the client will directly interact with your data nodes. So step number 4 is over. Step number 5 is this. Okay, so client will start sending data to different nodes. So all these client programs are actually they have their built-in intelligence to understand how the data should be divided and where exactly it should send. So the client will send the blocks here. Let's assume the client send a block called B1 here. Here B3, let's say. What is the size of B1? 64 MB, no spaces, right? So no spaces. So B1 will not be stored here, of course. B1 will be stored here. B2 got stored here, let's say. B3 got stored here, let's say. B4 I can adjust it here. Okay, so there's no guarantee that the block 1, block 2, block 3 and block 4 all will be stored in different system. Okay, it may also happen that block 1 and block 2 got stored here, block 3 got stored here, block 4 got stored here. Okay, now again there is a concept called replication factor. Again there is a concept called replication factor. So by default the replication factor is 3. Replication means duplicate the data. Okay, now once the client has started writing the data here, okay, then this data node will communicate to this data node. So this is step number 3, 4 and this is step number 5 actually. Okay, so in step number 5 the client writes the data into the data nodes, and now the data nodes will start communicating with another data node. This is step number 6. Alright, so see, while writing the data from client to these data nodes, the client will also tell the status of all the data nodes. Okay? With that information, the data node will do what? As soon as it is copied B4, okay, it will start copying the B4 here and somewhere else here also. Replication factor is 3. That means the data node will start copying this B4 block into 2 more different data nodes. So it may copy here and then here, it may copy here and then here. Okay, so that depends on the algorithm whatever the Hadoop is using internally. Now once this is done, your replication will be maintained. That means you will have B4 here, and as we are trying to copy, you will get B4 here also. You will get the block also. Again, you will get the block 4 here also. Okay. Similarly, when the client sends B1 block to this node, this data node will copy this B1 block here, as well as it will start copying this B1 block somewhere else. So B1 here, and B1 here also. Similarly, this B2 will start copying here. We start copying here also, because here we don't have sufficient space now. B4 is copied here. Sorry, B3 is placed there. We'll have B3 here also. We have B3 here also. Okay, now the original data size was 200 MB, but after application it will become around 600 MB, because 3 times totally it is getting replicated, right? So this is how the data will be stored on the data nodes. Okay, and once the data is stored in each data node, okay, this data node will tell name node that, hey boss, I have stored this data, I have stored this block of that file. Okay, that means after that this this data node will start communicating with name node. One minute. Okay, let me take this. You just ignore this line. You ignore this line. Okay, so that was step number 6. All the replication got over. And step number 7. So in this step number 7, the data node will inform name node what it has stored. Okay, so each data node will inform name node that boss, I have stored this block, this block, this block of this file. Okay, so all these details will be given by the client to data node, and data node will start copying the data here, and once copied it will try to transmit the data to other data node for replication. And in the meanwhile, this data node will also contact name node saying that I have stored this block of a particular file. Okay, and the name node guy will maintain all this data in his own register. So his register will look something like this. Let's say it is his register. Okay, so now let's say the register will have data something like this. What is the file name? File name is sampleprofile.txt. Samplefile.txt. It is broken down into how many parts? B1, B2, B3, B4. B1 size is 64 MB. B2 size is 64 MB. B3 size is 64 MB. B4 size is 8 MB. Okay, now B1. B1 block. Okay, B1 block is stored where and where. So if you see, the B1 block is stored in slave 2, right? So I'll say slave 2 at some address. Let's say 123. Let's say this is some address reference. Okay, again where exactly it is stored? B2 slave 3 at some address. Again where this B1 is stored? Slave 4 some address. So B1 is stored on these locations. Again in the next B2, where it is stored? B2 is stored in slave 2 at some location. Again slave 3 and slave 4, this location. Similarly, it will also give details of B3. B3 is stored in slave 2, slave 3, slave 4. Slave 2, slave 3, slave 4. Again B4 is stored in slave 1 some address. Slave 2, B4 is slave 2, okay, some address. Slave 4 address. So this kind of register is maintained by your name node. Okay, so who provide this information to the name node? The data node. The data node will tell that, boss, I am storing this data. So accordingly the name node will prepare some sort of register like this. Now we understood what is the responsibility of the name node and what is the responsibility of the data node, right? So the name node will help you to provide the cluster information to the client so that the client can write the data to the data node. The client writes the data to the data node. The data node maintains the data in the hard disk and then informs the status to name node. Okay, so this is what about write operation. We are trying to write the data. Similarly, when you try to read the data, let's say I want to read the data from this directory 3. I want to copy the data from Hadoop cluster to local system. So for that the command is get. This is the command to copy the data from Hadoop system to local system. Check it out. Hadoop fs-get /user sd user. Sd user is our Hadoop user. Okay. Directory 3. Earlier we had written the data in the directory 3. What the file name? Sample file.txt. We wrote sample file.txt to the directory 3. Now copy that file into /home suraj/temporary folder. That means now I want to copy the data from SDFS from Hadoop system to local system. Okay, so when you do this, what happens is the client will talk to the name node, boss, I want this file, sample file.txt. The name node will check sample.txt is there or not under me. Yes. So how many blocks it has divided into? Block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4. Okay, so where are the block 1 resides? Block 1 is present in slave 2, slave 3, slave 4. Block 2 present in slave 2, slave 3, slave 4. Similarly, it will get all the details of block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and it will return all this data, all this information to your client application. Okay, it will return all this data to your client application. Now from there the client will start reading the data from several blocks, several nodes. So the client will read block 1 from either slave 2 or slave 3 or slave 4. It will read block 2 from either of this. It will read block 3 from any of this, block 4 from any of this. So finally all this read will be done by your client application itself, and it gets the data. After getting the data, it will copy that data into the local file system. Okay, so we'll have a separate discussion on how the read and write operation takes place in depth, but for the time being just try to understand that it is not your name node who actually does read, who actually does write. Okay, so let's let's go through some notes. Name node. What is a name node? The name node is a centerpiece of an SDFS file system. It keeps the directory tree of all files in the file system and tracks where across the cluster the data file is kept. It does not store the data of this file itself. The client application talks to name node whenever they wish to locate a file, read a file, or whenever they want to add, copy, move, delete a file. The name node responds the successful request by returning a list of relevant data node server where the data lives. Okay, the name node is a single point of failure for SDFS cluster. SDFS is not currently a high available system. When the name node goes down, the file system goes offline. There is an optional secondary name node that is hosted on a separate machine. It can create checkpoints of the namespace by merging edit files into FS image file and does not provide any real redundancy. We will see that later. Okay, we'll talk about the secondary name node later. Now, one more thing we came to know that this master system is a single point of failure. This master node is a single point of failure. What does that mean? That means if my master system goes down due to any problem, okay, the whole Hadoop cluster will go down. The whole Hadoop cluster will go down. If one slave node goes down, then also it is okay. But if master goes down, then it is really not okay. Okay, so to compensate that, we have secondary name node, but don't think that secondary name node is a backup for master name node. It does something else. We will discuss that later. Okay, so what we understood is how does the read operation take place, how does the write operation takes place. Now let's talk about processing the data. So as we know that Hadoop is basically for two things: storing data and processing data. So we learn how to store the data, right? We will just give some put command, and the put command will interact with the name node. It gets the detail of data node, returns back to the put, and then the put starts dividing the data and then starts writing the data into the data nodes. Now let's understand how to process the data. So I will assume that this sample file.txt okay, contain let's say 200 lines. The sample file.txt was actually having 200 lines of data. Okay, so block 1 was divided into 64 MB, right? So let's assume that each line is of 1 MB. Okay, I'm just giving you an example. Each line is of 1 MB. So B1 block contains 64 lines. B2 contains 64 lines. B3 contains 64 lines. B4 contains 8 lines. Right? So try to understand that in this B4 I have 8 lines, in this B1 I have 64, 64, 64, 64, 64, 8, 64, 64, 64, 64, 64, 64 and 8 lines. Okay, we want to process this data simultaneously and parallelly. Now to process the data, we will do what? We will write a MapReduce program. we will write a MapReduce program. How do we write the MapReduce program? That is in the coming classes. We are not going to discuss anything as of now. So we will write some MapReduce program that will be in a Java. Okay, so we'll write a Java program. It is basically MapReduce program, and we'll convert that Java project to jar file. We'll export the Java program completely to jar file, and this jar file will contain the MapReduce program. Okay, so once you write your Java program in your local system, we need to submit this MapReduce program to the cluster so that the cluster can process. Okay, so let's say the jar file name is find all email.jar. Let's assume each line contains some data as well as some email ID. Okay, and I'm just interested to find out all the emails. My point. Now the file name is find all email.jar. So this find all emails.jar contains our program, right? Now in order to run this program, okay, in order to run this program, we will use a command like hadoop from this client. Hadoop jar. What is the jar file name? Find all email.jar, jar file name, and the main class which contains the main method. Okay, so let's say p1 is the package and the class name is extract email. Alright, now input file. What is the data? What is the data file name? The data file name is sample file.txt. Where do you have the data? Under this folder. So /user /sduser /directory3 contains sample file.txt. Okay, this is my input folder. Next, output path. Where do you want to store the result? /user /sduser /output folder. Okay, so this is basically the command. This is basically your command to run your jar file. Okay, assume that you have written your MapReduce program and you have now find all email.jar. You created a jar file out of it, and then you have issued this command from your client application, from your terminal. Hadoop jar find all email.jar p1.extract email. This is basically the main class which is present under this jar file in the p1 package, and input path and output path. So due to this, what will happen? This client will now again start interacting with your Hadoop cluster. Okay, but this time it will not contact Nemnode because it is none of the business of Nemnode. Nemnode is only for storing the data. Okay, storing the data, and it will help you to get the data, it will help you to copy the data, it will help you to delete the data. But when you try to submit your job, when you try to submit your program for processing, that request will be taken by your job tracker. Okay, that request will be taken by your job tracker. So I will just save this. Nemnode.jpg. Saved. A new file here, and let's just let's do one thing. Let's erase everything, not everything. We may need something. Alright, so now we have a very clear screen. We'll start it again. So let's assume that we have already stored the data on the various nodes, right? So and now we will execute the command to process the data. Let me also put all the data which were present here. This was slave 1, right? So I'll put here, we had B4. Alright, so we have all the blocks here, right? B4, B2, B3, B4, B1, B2, B3, B1, B2, B3, B4. Now we have prepared our jar file and we executed this command. So what will happen this time? Your client application will talk to job tracker, because we are trying to submit a job. We are trying to submit our MapReduce program. So it will communicate with your job tracker. This is step number 1. Okay. So the job tracker will try to see what is the input file. Input file is sample file.txt. Right? Input file is sample file.txt. After that, this job tracker will contact name node. And it will ask, tell me where have you stored sample file.txt. So the name node will say sample file.txt means B1, B2, B3, B4, and these are stored on all these slips. Okay, so the job tracker will come to know where exactly on what nodes those files are stored. Because if you take the cluster, here we are taking the example of only 4 node cluster. Okay, but in the real time you may have 150 different cluster, right? And it is very important for the job tracker to understand, in order to process the data of this input file, where exactly these input files are present in the nodes. So step number 1, step number 2. Okay, now the job tracker will understand, okay, I have to contact node 1, node 2, node 3, node 4. Node 1, 2, 3, 4. So after that, this job tracker will send this jar, whatever jar you have given, find all email.jar, will transfer the jar to task tracker 1, 2, 3, 4. So step number 1, this is your step number 2, right? Comes back, and then step number 3. Job tracker sends all these jar file to all this task tracker. Okay, as well as the job tracker will tell this task tracker that you work on B4 block. The job tracker will instruct the task tracker that you work on B4 block. Okay, that means node 1 will process B1, and then the job tracker will tell node 2 to process, let's say, sorry, this is B4. Job tracker will talk to task tracker to process, let's say, B3. Node 2, you process B3. Again, node 3, you process B1. Again, node 4, you process B2. Okay, so all this instruction will be given by job tracker. Now, when the job tracker gives all this instruction, it also stores those information in form of register, so that the job tracker should understand what is going on in each node, which block is being processed in each node. Okay, so the same jar file will work here, the same jar file will work here, the same jar file will work here, the same jar file will work here by the task tracker. Now that means this task tracker will process 64 line, this task tracker will process 64 line, sorry, this process 8 lines only, right? Yeah, I was okay, before, yes, this task tracker will process only 8 lines, 64 lines, 64 lines and 64 lines, right? B4 block is of 8 lines and B1, B2, B3 is of 64 lines. So all this data will be processed locally, alright, and once this data is processed, then the final output will be merged together. The final output will be merged together and the output will be stored in your output directory. The output will be stored in your output directory. Okay, so the job tracker will keep track of all the work assigned to all the employee. Okay, and all the employees, that is task tracker, will do the work, and at the same time it will also send the feedback. It will also send the percentage of completion to the job tracker. Okay, how much percentage it has got completed. Now sometime it may happen that one task tracker may go down, is not it? So let's say that this node went down. Let's say that this node went down. So what will happen? It was processing B4 block, right? It was processing B4 block, and that the work will be lost. So before losing that work, before this node goes down, it might have definitely sent the heartbeat signal to job tracker saying that I am alive, and as well as the percentage of completion. Okay, so the moment it is dead, okay, there will not be any heartbeat signal from this node to job tracker, and job tracker will wait for some time. Okay, after some time, if still it does not get the heartbeat back, if it does not get the signal back, it will understand that this node 1 is down. So what will happen? It will check in the node 1 what block I had given for processing B4. Okay, is there any other node having B4 block? Yes, we have. Node 2, node 3. Node 2 and node 3. So it will now schedule the job to either node 2 or node 3, but not both. Okay, and at the same time, when this goes down, when this node goes down, see, the data node will always in sync with name node. The task tracker will always be in sync with job tracker. So as soon as this node goes down, we will also lose the signal from this data node to name node, right? There will not be any signal communication between data node to name node. That time the name node will also understand that this node has gone down. So the name node will try to see in the node 1, that is maybe this one, in the node 1, okay, this node, sorry, in the node 1, which block we have stored. Node 1 is this. Which block we have stored. So B4 block, we have stored B4 block, right? Now that is dead. So what will happen? It will try to check where in the other node do we have B4. We have it here, we have it here. Now how many copies? Only 2 copies. Okay, replication factor is 3. So automatically this name node will instruct any of this data node that you give a copy to other node also. So in that process, this B4 block will be copied to this node also, so that at least the minimum replication will be maintained. Okay, so we understood what is the responsibility of our job tracker and task tracker. Job tracker will get the job from the client in form of jar file, input path and output path. Job tracker will try to understand for this particular file which are the blocks, which are the nodes that has stored the data. It will pass all the jar file. It will pass all the jar file to those nodes in the task tracker. The task tracker will execute the jar and it will complete the work. Finally, all the work will be aggregated and will be stored on the output folder. Now let's talk about the speculative execution also. So let's assume this block is alive, all these nodes are alive, and the job tracker has given B4 block to be processed by this node. Okay, and let's say that this node is very slow. The performance of this node has become very slow, and due to which it is unable to complete the work. Okay, whereas B1 was processed here completely, B2 was processed here successfully, B3 was processed here successfully. Now we are waiting for B4, which is being processed here. Okay, let's say till now 95% of the work is completed, 5% of the work is not yet completed. Okay, and due to the slowness it is taking a lot of time. So the job tracker will wait for some time. Okay, and if it still finds that the node 1, this node, is unable to complete this work before, it will immediately schedule some other node, okay, to process B4. By that time this node is free, this node is free, this node is free, because all of them have processed B1, B2 and B3. B4 is not processed. So the job tracker will assign that work to some other node. Let's say this node. It will say you start processing B4. So this task tracker will start processing B4 node, and here also the process will go on. It will not kill. Okay. Now after that, this node and this node, the node whoever completes the job at the first, his output will be considered, and the other guy will be killed. I mean that job will be killed. Okay, so this is what we call speculative execution. Usually the fundamental is, whenever you are processing the data in our nodes, never it will happen that a same node is processed in a same block is processed in more than one node. Okay, never it will happen that a same block is processed in more than one node. This node will process this block, this node will process some other block, this node will process some other block. But in case of your speculative execution, you will see the same block is being processed in more than one system, and the node who completes the job first, who processes the block first, its result will be considered, and the other node result will be discarded. Okay, so this is what we call speculative execution. So let's stop here for today, and in the next class we will try to understand how to write a simple MapReduce program. Thank you and have a nice day.